The moment they stepped inside, a tremendous voice echoed across the room. "Hey, where the hell did you guys go?" It was Seven. Ace was right behind him, and Clover was behind Ace, although she seemed to be hanging back. It looked as though there was something strange about them. Seven had the look of a man who'd seen a ghost. Ace was just as pale, and Clover looked as though she was only moments from passing out entirely. For a long moment, they simply stood there, looking at one another. Junpei looked around nervously, waiting for someone else to speak. No one did. He looked at Seven. What happened? What the hell kind of question is that? Seven was trying very hard to be angry, but something had shaken him hard. His shoulders were trembling, and his voice was strained. Snake is... Seven couldn't even finish. He just looked away, his face twisted by... Junpei wasn't sure what. Instead, Ace spoke. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and spoke. Snake is dead. He died, just as the ninth man did. Oh no. It was as all the air had suddenly been sucked out of the room. Junpei felt his heartbeat quicken, and he realized he was having trouble breathing. He could feel cold sweat beating on his forehead and neck. June, Santa, and Lotus looked the way he felt. All three are frozen in place, their faces white. Oh my god, that's not true, is it? We should make sure. Yeah, right, we should. They nodded to one another and headed for the door, number 3 door. Wait, not that way. They stopped short and turned to look at Seven. He was pointing at the door with no number. I stuck a screwdriver in there to keep the door from closing all the way. It's not locked, so you can go in that way. Where is he? The shower room on the left side of the hallway. I put a broom in there too, so to keep the door open. We can get in without going through the number door, right? Yeah, that's right. The new destination clear. Junpei and his companions headed for the door with no number. Once in the hallway, it was easy to spot the metal door on the left wall. It hadn't been opened when they'd been through before, but now, just as Seven had said, there was a broom stuck between the door and the frame, keeping it open. They looked at it for a moment and stepped inside. It smells horrible. Lotus wrinkled her nose and covered her mouth in disgust. Even Santa pinched his nose shut. Yeah, this is pretty awful. I feel like I'm gonna puke. It was just as bad as they had said, perhaps worse. A hideous smell filled the air, so thick they could almost taste it. It was sour and smelled of fish, feces, and burnt meat. It worked its way through Junpei's nose and down his throat to pound against the entrance to his stomach. He put his hands over his mouth and struggled to keep what little was in his stomach where it belonged. He didn't have to wonder where the body was. There was blood everywhere, a few arms of the splatter reaching toward them as they walked through the door. All one had to do was follow the many radial arms to the source. The body itself was hidden behind a divider. June, you should stay here. But, please, just do me a favor, okay? Alright? He didn't give her the chance to say no. He put his hand on her shoulder, as if to shove her into the ground like a tent pole, turned, and walked toward the end of the divider. It felt like it took an eternity for him to get there. Santa and Lotus followed, timid and nervous as a pair of children. Eventually, they reached the divider. They looked at one another and nodded, slowly. Junpei put his hands on the divider and peered around the corner. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. He felt his heart collapse in his chest, like an empty cigarette carton, and time froze. He knew that instant that he would take the imagery form to the grave. Ew! What was left of the body sat in a sea of blood. Chunks of flesh, torn from the body, sat in the blood like tiny islands in a great red sea. Fast forward. Did I see this already? It's not letting me skip. Spilled out like fresh spaghetti. Yep. Smaller chunks of meat had splattered against the wall and become stuck there as they dried. Globules of yellowish fat had left trails like tiny slugs as gravity pulled them down the wall, even as they dried to it. Just like Ace said. Santa's voice was strained. Junpei suspected he was holding down some vomit of his own, just like the ninth man. The detonator in his bracelet set off the bomb in his gut. It looked as though the explosion had been quite powerful. His legs were both bent in an odd, unnatural way, and his left arm had split open, exposing the painfully white bone of his ulna. Nothing can be painfully white. His bracelet lay next to him. It seemed to have hit the wall hard enough to have shattered the display, which lay on the ground in pieces. Half of his head had simply collapsed. The blood coating it almost made it look like raw pizza dough covered in tomato sauce. His clothes, too, were covered in blood. The burgundy tie, the white shirt, the jacket with the yellow piping, and the gray slacks. They are all familiar to Junpei. No mistake about that. It's Snake. Lotus's voice was naturally deep and strained, and Junpei heard it catch in her throat. Poor Snaky Poo. I wonder if there's a way to get everyone out alive. Even the Ninth Man. Because all this would be a lot easier with the number 9. The squeal that tortured Mental made Junpei's teeth curl. Sounded like the noise of a ghost would make. No matter how many times he heard it, he never got used to it. Every time it put him on edge. It didn't help that there was a girl nearby who looked far more like a ghost than a living human should. It was Clover. She sat on the edge of the bed, her head drooping listlessly onto her chest. Her eyes were blank and stared across the room at nothing. Her breathing was slow and mechanical. Aside from the rise and fall of her chest, she didn't move. Junpei felt as if even a nudge might cause it to shatter into 1,000 pieces. Snake was probably murdered. Chances are he was killed the same way the Ninth Man was. Seven lowered his voice, likely in an effort to keep Clover from hearing what he had to say. There were 4 other people in the room with Junpei and Seven. Ace, Santa, June, and Lotus. Seven looked at each one of them in turn and continued. It's pretty straightforward. Not that hard to figure out how they did it. First, the killer shot Snake Top to indicate on the red to open door 3. Then they shoved him into it, alone, and waited 9 seconds for the door to shut. Once that door shut, it was over for Snake, but he didn't give up. He probably knew it wouldn't do him any good, but he probably ran into the shower room looking for the dead. It was a small chance, but it wasn't like he had anything to lose. Unfortunately, it didn't work. The detonators only deactivated if everybody who authenticated when they went in uses the dead. And then 81 seconds after he was shoved in, that happened. I see. So that's what you meant by killers, huh? You need at least 3 people to open one of the numbered doors, including Snake. It wouldn't open for Snake and a single killer. Exactly. That means wait. Yep. Okay, I can skip this. I guess I saw Ace, Lotus, and Clover. So I guess if anyone was going to do it, it'd have to be Santa and Seven. Was Zero on the ship with them? Of course he was. That was obvious. Zero was somewhere on the ship, but Junpei had no idea where. Junpei mumbled to himself, lost in thought. Where could Zero be hiding? Suddenly, everyone went very quiet. The silence was cold and clammy. Junpei could feel it crawling across his back and around his throat. Again, he heard the ghosting moaning noise. Okay, let's go. What? Said, okay, that's crazy. That's crazy. Isn't the ship going to sink in a few hours? If Zero is here with us, he'd be putting himself in danger. Why the hell would he do something like that? There's no motive. Clover looked up at Junpei and her face fell. You don't believe me? I believe you. Her eyes were so pitiful. The moment Junpei's met them, he felt his heart tighten. He didn't think what he said was wrong, but perhaps the way he'd said it had been. He'd been too insensitive. Yep, great. Clover had just lost her brother. His death would have been bad enough, but she'd also seen the blasted wreck of his body. Junpei barely knew him, and the sight had been enough to make him sick. What Clover had felt, he couldn't begin to imagine. In the mental state she must have been in, it was understandable that she would look at those around her with suspicion. She felt everyone was against her. The least Junpei could have done was try to understand what she was feeling. He felt ashamed of what he'd said. Perhaps, he thought, I should apologize. But before that apology could begin... Clover, I understand what you're feeling. You don't feel that you can trust any of us. Ace had beaten Junpei to the punch. As he spoke to Clover, his face was calm and friendly. But you have to understand, the more we distrust one another, the further we fall into our foe's trap. Zero is the one who did those horrible things to your brother. Do you want to let yourself be manipulated by someone who would do such a horrible thing? Clover didn't answer. She didn't even look at Ace. The whole time, her eyes were on Junpei. He could feel Clover's eyes boring into him. They were the color of a deep winter lake. Junpei saw no suspicion in them, only sadness. Then, in that horrible silence, awesome. They heard a bell begin to ring. Let's go. Then we need to move now. 7, Clover. I know how you feel, but you do understand that right now it's important we trust one another, don't you? 7 and Clover remained silent. Their eyes were looking at something somewhere very far away. We must go. We have very little time left. Ace's words put their feet to moving. They all knew where they were going. The next destination was Mercury. Wait, why Mercury? Oh. It sat bolted to the wall near the stairs that led to the casino and kitchen between the 2 elevators. The Mercury card reader. Junpei stood in front of it with the Mercury key card. 7 had given him the card. I found it when we were checking out the shower room. At least that's what he'd said. Junpei slid the card through the reader. The light on the reader turned green and made a tiny electronic noise. Now they were ready. Junpei and Jun had been chosen as the investigators. The reasoning being that they had been to the E-deck before and no one else had. As before, Junpei sent the elevator ahead to make sure the floor they were heading to wasn't flooded. As before, the elevator returned dry as when it had left. Once it had been checked for water, Junpei and Jun stepped onto the elevator. There were only 2 floor buttons that they could push. The C and bottom buttons. The rest were destroyed or did nothing when pushed. And Junpei hit the bottom button. Yeah, he did. The door closed. Slowly, they began to move downward. Sometime later, Junpei and Jun stepped out the elevator and onto the bottom deck. They stepped off and saw that the hallway to the right ended somewhere between 20 and 25 feet from them. The hallway in front of them was a dead end, but not a regular dead end. This is a number door. This is the 8th one we found. The 2 number doors on B deck, near the central staircase. Those are doors 4 and 5. There are 3 more numbered doors in the large hospital room, doors 3, 7, and 8. Junpei and Jun had found another door on E deck, and Lotus and Santa had found the 7th on A deck. There was a 6 on the door on E deck, and a 1 on the door on A deck. And now, door to your in front of Junpei. Yep, that was the only thing it meant. Only one thing it meant. You think the next door we find? Yeah, I think so. The next one's got to be door 9. Despite himself, Junpei felt excited. There was something about that excitement that frightened him as well. He did his best to put it from his mind and headed back to C deck with Jun. Alright, let's open these up. The pieces of paper they folded up lay on the ground next to Junpei's legs. There were 7 of them, all told. They were written on paper pulled from Junpei's notebook, and each one bore a code name and door. Why had they decided to vote that way? They decided it wasn't fair to simply ask everyone at once. That would allow people to force others to go through certain doors. Well, that wasn't the only reason. Junpei had proposed a voting system, and he had a plan. It wasn't a plan he wanted anyone catching wind of, however, so he did his best to act calm as he began to open and read the pieces of paper. The first one read, Ace requested door 1. Yes, I do. Would you like me to explain why? No, we don't have the time for that. Sorry, let's keep going. He opened the second one. Next to Santa. He wants door 6. Yeah, that's what I wrote. Junpei continued with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th pieces of paper. Clover wants 1, Lotus wants 2, 7 also wants 2. Eh? Wait a minute. There was no way I'm going anywhere with the Elephant Man. No. There'd be no point to the voting if we let people change their choices because of stuff like that. But just give it up, Lotus. It's not like I want to hang out with some exhibitionist grandma. I'm not an exhibitionist. I'm wearing clothes. Yeah, I can see the inside of your hips. You'd shave your vagina. Barely. So? Last I checked, that's not a crime. Maybe. What about common decency? Nobody wants to have to look at a chick who looks like a half-naked raisin. Aw. I'm going to kill you! Holy shit. Lotus's hair flared out like the mane of an angry lion. She roared with a voice that shook the walls. Yep. Alright. With some difficulty, Ace managed to reach in. Junpei! Read the rest! Right. Junpei drew his eyes away from and looked down at the 6 pieces of paper. He opened it. June wants door 6. Yes. I don't really have a reason. I just felt like it. All the papers, save Junpei's, had been read. He just some quick calculations in his head. People who requested door 1, Ace and Clover. That was a door on A deck near the central staircase. People who requested door 2, 7 and Lotus. 6. This was a door on the bottom deck and could be reached by taking the elevator to the bottom of the ship. People who requested door 6, Santa and June. This is a door on E deck and could be reached by taking the elevator near the central staircase down. It took him less than a second to run the numbers. He opened the 7th piece of paper and spoke. Okay, the last one is mine. I want to go through... I'm interested in door 1. My choice is door 1. Santa was unconvinced. Hey, wait a minute there. You cheating? Cheating? I'm asking if you changed your number after you heard what the doors we wanted. How could I do that? I wrote it down on the paper earlier. Let me see that. Junpei shrugged and handed it to him. Santa examined it furiously. The others peered at it as well. As they did, Junpei quickly slipped a piece of paper he'd been hiding into his pocket. Although he'd never know it now, Santa had been justified in his suspicions. Junpei had switched papers. He had prepared 3 pieces of paper for doors 1, 2, and 6 and put the paper of door 6 on it into the pot. He put a small mark on it so that he would know which one was his. He put the paper that said door 1 in his left hand, paper that read door 2 in his right. When the drawing began, he saw to it that he drew last. The rest was easy. If he wanted to go into door 1, he'd use his left hand, and his right hand if he wanted door 2. Of course, if he wanted door 6, that would be simple. All he needed to do was switch nothing and say 6 had been what he wanted all along. Well, what does it say? He felt the urge to smirk. You got lucky. What? Santa snorted and tossed the paper aside, frustrated. Very well, we decided who will go with through door 1. I'll be Clover, Junpei, and myself. Yep. Our only problem is the 2 remaining teams. June and I wanted door 6. Lois and I wanted door 2. That's not good. We can't open either of those doors with only 2 people. Fine. 7, we'll go through door 6. Okay. Sure thing. I didn't really want to go through door 2 anyway. Besides, if we just got a younger girl with this, it'll lower the average age. Right, June? Well, June was at a loss for words. Lotus was not. That pig. You just wait and see. Also, I like how her face just floated across the screen. Her eyes were the eyes of a woman prepared to kill. A shiver ran down Junpei's spine. Even after they separated at the staircase, Lotus was still muttering angrily to herself. Circumstance dictated that Junpei and June would have to part ways again. This time it didn't sting quite so much. After all, he knew he'd see her again. Until we find that 9th door, Zero ain't gonna split us up. Might get separated for a little while, but we'll see each other again. Otherwise, we can't open door 9. That's how the Donnery game works. That's how the game works. Boy! Junpei, Ace, and Clover headed toward A deck. They took out the Earth key and opened the door to the left. It opened, and they walked through. It was just as Santa and Lotus had said. At the end of the hallway sat a door with a large red 1 upon it, a numbered door. To the left of it, bolted to the wall, was the red. Ace went first and waved his wrist over the scanner panel. Junpei was next. Finally, listlessly, Clover lifted her arm. She leaned toward the scanner panel. Poor Clover. The 3rd asterisk clicked to life, shining brightly. Ace took hold of the lever. He took a deep breath and turned to Junpei and Clover. Are you ready? Shall I pull it? Yeah, anytime. Clover said nothing. She nodded, little more than a lethargic twitch of her head. Very well then, let's go. 3, 2, 1. Boop. The door opened. They stumbled into the room. Boop. Boop. Frantically, Junpei scanned the room. Found it. His eyes stopped on a device that would determine whether they lived or died. There it is. Over there. Next to the door they come through was a dead. As one, they ran to it. They put their hands over it as if they were fighting for it. Hooray! Nobody's dead. It stopped. Yes, it did. Junpei could feel his heart pounding against the inside of his ribs. Ace and Clover were breathing hard and fast. It was the third time they'd been through the process, but they had yet to grow accustomed to it. Not that Junpei wanted to. He planned to finish the game before he got a chance to let imminent death become commonplace. Junpei looked around again, this time more slowly. Looks cool. There's another door, different from the one they'd entered through. He took hold of the knob and easily, gently pulled it open. Hey! So this is the wheelhouse. He closed the door again and turned to Ace and Clover. He fixed each in turn with a meaningful stare, then smoked. Ace, you investigate the wheelhouse next door. Very well. Clover, you're in charge of this room. Say something. Okay, I will. Alright then. Let's get started. That's a lot of crap. Alright, let's get good to go. Next time. Bye.